Good evening. The date is Friday, January 23rd, 2026. If you were to look at a map of West Africa today, well, the borders would look the same as they did a month ago.
On the surface, yeah.
But if you look deeper at the flow of influence, the movement of strategic resources, the posture of military forces, that map has been fundamentally redrawn.
It's a reordering, and it is happening with remarkable speed. When we analyze the intelligence from the last 2 weeks, say from January 7th through today, what we see is a region that's bifurcating.
How so?
Well, you have the coastal states, especially southern Nigeria, integrating further into the global economy. At the same time, the interior, the Sahelian states, they're sealing themselves off from the West. They're betting their survival on authoritarian sovereignty and new alliances in the East.
Sovereignty. That really is the theme, isn't it? But it's sovereignty at a very steep cost. We're seeing this collision between national pride and the harsh realities of logistics and security.
Precisely.
Now, before we get into the specifics, I should note that this deep dive is presented by ProWave AI.
And the intelligence we're synthesizing for you today is generated by Stylo News. It's important to clarify what that means. Stylo News is the consumer-facing version of Stylo Intel Ops.
Right, and that software originally engineered for very high-level enterprise operations. We're talking about government agencies, military commands.
Multinational corporations. So what this means is that you, the listener, are using a tool designed for global decision makers.
Exactly. The system analyzed over 250 sources in more than 20 languages in under a minute to find the patterns we're about to discuss.
And the primary pattern the system flagged this week is this paradox of intervention.
You mean the return of American kinetic power to a region that has very explicitly demanded its departure?
I do. You're referring to the recent airstrikes in northwest Nigeria. The event itself happened around Christmas, but the full intelligence picture, the geopolitical fallout, that's only just crystallized.
U.S. missile strikes targeting the Lakurawa Jihadist group in Sokoto State.
Correct. And we should pause on Lakurawa. This isn't a name that has dominated headlines like Boko Haram or ISWAP.
No.
These are militants, herdsmen, largely from that Mali-Niger border region who've drifted south. Now, the Trump administration's official rationale for the strike was framed as a moral imperative.
Their words.
Yes. They said the objective was to protect Nigerian Christians and to degrade this new terror franchise before it could really take hold.
And Sokoto is a very sensitive location. It's the gateway to the Sahel, sitting right on that border. So while the official line is counterterrorism, you have to think the placement of these strikes was also a strategic signal.
Oh, absolutely. It demonstrates that the United States still has reach, even after being evicted from its bases in neighboring Niger.
But the intelligence seems to paint a picture of a reactive operation, not a proactive one.
That's the key. Reports indicate a massive intelligence failure preceded this. We have credible sourcing suggesting that 3 trailer loads, literally semi-trucks packed with fighters, managed to infiltrate Sokoto State months before the U.S. strike.
3 trailer loads, moving unnoticed through state territory.
Exactly. That suggests a near-total blindness in local surveillance.
And that failure, it must have colored the local reaction.
It did. The Stylo sentiment analysis shows that while, yes, there is some relief that targets were hit, there's also deep skepticism. Locals are asking, why were 3 trucks full of fighters allowed to just park in our forests for months?
So they see it less as a humanitarian rescue and more as what?
Strategic maintenance. That's the phrase we're seeing. An effort to protect broader American interests in the region's resources, not necessarily the people in the villages.
And this skepticism was then amplified by the regional neighbors. The Alliance of Sahel States, the AES.
Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, yes. They issued a condemnation that was, well, it was notable for its vitriol. This bloc is hardening into a distinctly anti-Western front.
They saw the strikes in Nigeria not as help for a neighbor, but as a threat.
A direct threat to their own sovereignty narrative. They interpreted it as the West refusing to let go of military control over the Sahel.
And the algorithm surfaced a connection here I found fascinating. It's quite telling about these new global alignments. The AES didn't just condemn the strikes in Nigeria.
No, they didn't. They issued a joint condemnation of U.S. actions in Venezuela.
The arrest of Nicolas Maduro.
Yes. And on the surface, it seems almost absurd. Why would a junta in Niamey care about an arrest in Caracas? But in the world of geopolitical signaling, it makes perfect sense.
It's about building an ideological front.
It is. By linking their struggle to events in Venezuela, they're framing their regional disputes as part of a global resistance to what they call neo-imperialism.
It's the axis of resistance model,
Yeah.
transplanted to West Africa.
Yeah.
They're telling their own people they aren't isolated.
Exactly. And this posturing has immediate, tangible consequences. The U.S. expanded visa bans on Sahelian leaders, and then in a move of pure defiance, Burkina Faso and Mali reciprocated.
Banning U.S. citizens from travel.
It's a significant escalation. Expelling an ambassador is one thing. Closing the border to civilians physically isolates these populations from the West.
Which leads us directly to the economic reality. You can close your borders, but you can't close your economy to the need for revenue. And that brings us to the uranium standoff in Niger.
The yellow cake standoff, yes. Right now, there are about 1,000 tons of uranium concentrates just sitting, immobile, at the Somaire mine and likely the airport in Niamey.
And for our listeners, 1,000 tons of uranium concentrate. That represents hundreds of millions of dollars in potential energy revenue. It's a massive asset to have stranded.
It is. The junta has effectively nationalized the mine. They're in a fierce legal battle with the French company Orano. There are allegations of theft from the French side, claims of sovereignty from the Nigerian side.
But the result is a deadlock. The uranium isn't moving.
The traditional Western supply chains are broken.
So they must have a plan B. You can't just sit on uranium. You have to sell it.
And that plan B appears to be Russia. Stylo News highlighted a critical diplomatic move here, the appointment of Viktor Voropayev as the resident Russian ambassador in Niamey.
A resident ambassador. That implies a permanent logistical hub, not just a diplomatic courtesy.
That's right. You don't send a high-level operative to Niamey just for handshakes. His presence signals a clear pivot towards Russian logistical cooperation.
So the expectation is, what? Russian cargo planes?
That's the prevailing assessment. We should expect Russian aircraft to eventually facilitate the transport of that uranium, bypassing Western sanctions and markets, likely heading for Russian or even Iranian processing.
So while Niger struggles to move its uranium out, its ally Mali is struggling to get fuel in. This fuel war seems to be really testing the limits of that AES alliance.
It's a crisis that just exposes the cruelty of the current security vacuum. Mali is landlocked, is facing a severe fuel shortage because of a blockade by JNI, the al-Qaeda affiliate.
They're targeting the supply lines.
Threatening to kill the drivers, yes. And one would expect Niger to support Mali, but the reports we're seeing suggest a very heavy-handed approach to that support.
Heavy-handed is one way to put it. The Nigerian government revoked the licenses of 34 transport operators.
For refusing to drive their fuel tankers into Mali.
The drivers are refusing because they're afraid of being killed, and the state's response is to destroy their livelihoods.
It's a profound human rights dilemma. The state is enforcing regional solidarity, basically saying, the alliance needs this fuel, you must deliver it. But the drivers are arguing they're being coerced into a suicide mission.
It shows that for all the talk of sovereignty and strength, they lack the actual security control to protect the very trade routes they depend on.
And they are forcing civilians to bear the physical risk of their political posture.
This disconnect between government decrees and the reality on the ground, that isn't unique to the Sahel. I mean, if we look at Nigeria, it feels like a country living in two different centuries at the same time.
The two Nigerias phenomenon, it is stark. On one hand, you have the economic data from the south. Nigeria's non-oil exports hit a record, $6.1 billion in 2025.
That's a huge success story. It suggests a real diversification away from the crude oil dependence that's plagued their economy for decades.
It does. Nigerian goods are reaching 120 countries now. India, Brazil, the Netherlands. If you're a businessman in Lagos, the outlook is cautiously optimistic. You see President Tinubu honoring figures like Gilbert Chagoury. You see the ports moving volume.
But if you travel north, that whole narrative just collapses.
Completely. While the South celebrates export records, the Northeast is facing a famine. The UN World Food Program had to cut aid because of funding shortages. They went from supporting 1.3 million people down to just 72,000.
A reduction of over 90%. So more than 1 million people displaced by war are essentially being told there is no more food coming.
It is a catastrophic failure of the safety net. And this economic desperation, of course, fuels the security crisis. We saw it with the mass abduction in Kaduna State at Kermanwali Village.
Over 160 worshippers taken during a church service. But what the Stylo analysis flagged was not just the violence, it was the state's initial reaction.
The pattern of denial. When the reports first came out, local police denied it happened, Only after a huge public outcry did they confirm it.
That pattern does so much damage to public trust. When the state is gaslighting its own citizens about their safety, it creates a vacuum of authority.
And in that vacuum, the terrorists aren't just attacking the state, they're attacking each other. We saw those clashes between ISWAP and the Bukura faction near the Niger border. Dozens of terrorists killed in their own infighting.
Which, for a civilian, just adds another layer of chaos and unpredictability.
Exactly. You're caught in the crossfire not just of the army versus insurgents, but insurgent versus insurgent.
Is there any bright spot? Any sector where the Nigerian security apparatus is functioning effectively?
There is one, the Niger Delta. The military reports zero pipeline vandalism in recent weeks. Oil production is up to 2.2 million barrels per day.
Which again reinforces that to Nigeria's theory. The state has the capacity to secure the oil infrastructure, the revenue generator,
but struggles to secure the villages in the north. Resources are allocated where the return on investment for the state treasury is immediate.
Let's talk about public sentiment. What is the pulse of the region, according to Stylo's analysis of social media? Given all of these hardships, is there a backlash against the juntas in the AES countries?
It's surprising, but the support for the AES is resilient. In Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, there is a strong, almost fervent online support for this sovereignty narrative. People are cheering the rejection of Western interference. They see the hardships as a necessary sacrifice for dignity.
And what about Nigeria?
There, the dominant feeling is just frustration and fear. The disconnect between the Lagos success story and the Kaduna security nightmare is what drives the conversation.
And are we seeing any other worrying signs?
In Mali, yes. The government banned the magazine Jeune Afrique, accusing it of terrorism promotion.
Labeling journalism as terrorism, that's a classic authoritarian move.
It is. International observers see it as straight-up media suppression. It suggests the junta, while it has support now, is preemptively silencing critics in case that support starts to wane.
So let's look at the decision makers. In Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu seems to be walking a very fine tightrope.
He is. He's trying to project this image of a global economic statesman focusing on exports while simultaneously managing a domestic security emergency that could swallow his administration.
And General Tiani in Niger.
His objective is singular: regime security. He's doubling down on the pro-Russia, anti-West stance, betting that resource nationalism and strict military control will keep him in power.
Looking ahead then, the next 2 weeks. Based on the patterns Stylo has identified, what should we be watching for?
4 key indicators. First, the AES military deployment. They've announced a unified force of 5,000 troops. We need to watch where they go. If they deploy to the borders to protect the capitals, it's a regime protection force. If they deploy into the bush to fight JNI, it's a real security operation.
Okay, second.
The Niamey airport. Watch for those Russian cargo planes. If that uranium starts moving, it confirms the pivot to Russia is complete.
And in Nigeria.
Watch the schools in the north. There's a government push to partially reopen schools that were closed due to kidnapping threats. It is a fragile attempt to restore normalcy.
But if there's an attack on a reopened school...
the psychological impact would be devastating.
And finally, is there any unifying event happening? Something positive?
Sports diplomacy. The Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON, is ongoing in Morocco. The North African teams, Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, are performing very well. In a region this fractured by politics, football is one of the few shared languages.
It's a complex picture. A region trying to redefine itself, often violently, in real time. The old assumptions of French influence, of American oversight, they seem to be obsolete.
They are. We are in a new era of resource nationalism and multipolar alliances.
And to understand this new era, you need more than just headlines. You need to see the connection between a visa ban in Bamako and a court case in Venezuela, which is the capability that Stylo News provides.
It is. For you, the individual user, Stylo News offers a suite of tools that are remarkably powerful. The application includes what we call a personal intelligence agency feature.
And that includes the location AI bot for pattern of life analysis and the strategic watch list. You can tell the system to track specific trends, Niger uranium, Sahel security, and it delivers an intelligence brief just like the one we presented today.
It essentially democratizes high-level intelligence for anyone who needs to understand the world for business, for travel, or just to be well-informed. It's an invaluable asset.
You can subscribe and download the application at www.stylonews.com. It is truly the most efficient way to ensure you are operating with the same level of information as the experts.
I highly recommend it.
Thank you for lending us your time and attention today. We know the news cycle can be overwhelming, and we appreciate you trusting us to help you navigate it.
It's been a pleasure.
If there's a specific region or a topic you'd like us to do a deep dive on next, please do let us know on social media. We value your input. Until then, keep watching the patterns.
And stay informed. Goodbye.